All right, I think we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Black Wellbeing, Finding Your Balance Mentally, Physically, and Nutritionally. My name is Jatan Davis, and I'll be your moderator for the panel tonight. Welcome to this evening presentation, or not presentation, but panel conversation brought to you by the Black Alumni of Notre Dame in partnership with the Southwest region of the National Notre Dame Alumni Association, who's definitely in our thoughts right now as they handle some serious inclement weather. We definitely have them in our thoughts. We all realized that we are meeting tonight during a very crazy time. And so we felt it was only right for us to start off with some words acknowledging this moment that we're living through. And so we are lucky enough tonight to have a Notre Dame alum, Dr. Milo Dodson, who's a licensed psychologist with us. So Dr. Milo, I'm gonna turn it over to you to get us started, get us right before we have our discussion.
Yes. Thank you for that intro. Good evening, everybody. Brother Milo here. And so as we share and enter this virtual space together, I really want us to just feel encouraged to close our eyes. If we don't feel comfortable closing our eyes, just softly gaze down in front of us and feel grounded and feel centered in this space of community, in this space of love, and reflect on what we are currently going through as a people, as a community, and as a family. We continue to think about those who go without, the under-resourced, the underserved, those whose voices are often washed over and ignored. And knowing that we have that voice in this community, focusing also on the breath that gives that voice. A lot of us are still grieving. A lot of us are still in shock. Just at the beginning of last year, I know I personally lost two of my heroes with Kobe Bryant and Dr. Marcus Bolden. And so I intentionally speak their name as two influential Black men in our family. And so it's our shaped understanding and experience over this past year to remind ourselves of the ongoing presence of life, of breath, and love. And so to kick off our panel, I really just want us to focus on our breath together, to be encouraged to cry together, to laugh together, and heal together, reminding ourselves that there is no health without mental health. And this is our sacred place and space to be healthy. I close with the quote that has got me through the darkest of days from Audre Lorde, who quite fittingly today is her birthday. Knowing that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. And so as we continue to focus on the quality of our breath, I invite everyone to feel encouraged to open your eyes, to gaze back up, to feel welcomed into this space together, empowered and in love.
Thank you. Just breathing. Thank you for that, Dr. Milo. So again, everyone, welcome to our panel this evening. Before we get started, we'll be here for about an hour and 30 minutes or so. And so we want to get started with some introductions just to let everyone know who we are. And again, as I said, my name is Jatan Davis, and I'll be the moderator for the panel tonight. I am a 2005 Notre Dame alum, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Gender Studies, and had a career in internet marketing for about a decade or so before moving over to higher ed, where I returned to Notre Dame and have been back in Atlanta, Georgia, where I work at Emory University for the past 3.5 years. And I have to say that 4 years after graduating from Notre Dame, I was on the Black Alumni Board myself. So very happy to be here in just an alum capacity, supporting this new and renewed initiative that the BA has going on. Also, in addition to my work in higher ed, I'm also I'm a teen life coach, and I have a career podcast called Journey to Jupiter, which I've interviewed quite a few Notre Dame alum, Dr. Milo as one of them. And so if you're interested in that career podcast, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And of course, you can find me on social media at Jatan Davis. Now, let's kick it off to who wants to go next? We don't have to be so formal with it. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Oh, Yolanda, okay, go ahead. I'll pick somebody.
Like, I'll get it over with. No. I am Yolanda Carroll. I am class of 92. So I think I am, I know I am the senior member here. I am a Texas girl, and I wanted to do exactly what Milo just mentioned. And mentioned my father's name, Johnny Carroll. He passed away last March 1st. So it will be almost a year coming up, I guess, next week or so. It's hard to believe it's been a year, but I did want to do that, Milo. So I'm glad you actually mentioned that. Anyway, class of 92, accounting undergrad. I lived in Pascagoula East for 3 years. After Notre Dame, I decided that I hated accounting. And so I went to MBA school, and I came back to Texas and went to the Macomb School for MBA school. And out of there, since then, for no particular reason, it seems like I've been in transportation and logistics for the past 20 plus years. I started at American Airlines in finance, marketing, and sales roles. I moved over to an airline catering company, so still transportation related, and again, back to accounting, and then I did a little bit of HR. And then for the past 18 years, I have been at BNSF Railway. And so that's the US's largest railroad, and it's owned by Warren Buffett, so it's a private company. And I've been in a variety of roles, from economic development to finance to marketing communications to where I am now, which is leading a sales team responsible for wind energy. So moving freight, not sexy, but absolutely necessary. But is not. But my passions, I'm a traveler, and I've been to 72 countries and 6 continents. It would have been 7, except that our Antarctica trip got canceled in December. So that's where my passion lies. My secondary passion is probably eating and drinking, which is what leads me to needing to exercise so much. It's interesting. I turned 50 last year, and it's become just that much more important now to stay physically and mentally healthy.
Lene, we're gonna let the
Lene.
I guess it's my turn. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lene Urban. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2007. I was a psychology major, and I remember the psychology class that I took with Milo, sitting right next to him. So it's just wonderful to be back here, especially on this panel with him. I grew up in New York, in Staten Island, actually. And then after graduating from Notre Dame, moved to the Chicago area, where I've been since then. I have 3 girls, married to a fellow Notre Dame alum. After graduating college, I went into the administrative side of higher education, online higher education. And a few years into my career, I was really struggling with emotional eating and food addiction, struggling with weight gain, in the middle of trying to juggle being a parent, a working parent, full-time working parent of 3 girls. And not just that, but trying to just be superwoman. So be superwoman at work and at home. And all of that stress and pressure, I internalized it, and then it manifested itself in the forms of a very unhealthy relationship with food. And so after experiencing health issues, something had to change. I realized when it was no longer about, well, in college I wore this size and I looked like this, and now I look like that. This is not working out. It changed from that to, I have to be healthy enough. I have to stay alive. I have to be here long enough to see my babies grow up and have babies of their own. And at the current pace and rate that I'm going, that's not going to happen. So that was the light bulb moment for me, where I really woke up, made some changes, not just to my eating and exercise, but to my lifestyle, especially to my stress management, my self-care. And I developed a passion for being able to teach women, especially working moms, to make that pivot, that shift from, oh, I just want to fit back into this dress, to, no, I want to live, I want to treat my body in the best way I possibly can, because I love and respect myself. So that's a passion that I developed for health and fitness. I became a certified nutrition consultant, a lifestyle coach, and that is what that's what I invest my energy and my passion into, is to helping women along that journey. So very excited to be here, very excited for this panel discussion. And I guess I'll go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Milo.
Yeah, man, thank you. First, I want to give you props, because I remember in that class you were talking about, the professor, whoever it was, had highlighted something that you had just like published. And so I want to make sure I give you props here for the inspiration way back when, that helped me get through that class and all the Notre Dame psych stuff. So thank you for that. Good evening, everybody. Again, so I graduated in 2008, and I was a psychology major, Africana studies minor. I lived all the way out in Carroll Hall. So to be to be an 18-year-old Black man from LA moving by himself to middle of nowhere, Notre Dame, Indiana, I felt like Notre Dame was out to get me right off the bat. Putting me in Carroll Hall felt quite disrespectful, but I love it there. Shout out to all my vermin who may be tuned in. So as we're talking about in psych, like, to be honest, I knew about psychology, but I didn't really understand what it meant to have mental health until I got my first C on that psych exam. Went on a date the night before that first exam. Not a good idea. Don't do that. But in all seriousness, I had to learn what actual mental health was. So somewhere along the lines between Lene and Dr. Donald Pope Davis, being really inspired to get a PhD in counseling psychology. After I graduated, went to Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And then I was at the UC Irvine Counseling Center for the last 8 years. And no joke, probably just a month ago, January 21st was my last day there. Now I'm the senior manager for diversity and inclusion and community outreach for Belkin International. So thank you. So to me, mental health isn't just about like being a psych major. It's not just about going to therapy, but definitely go to therapy. It's also just about the day-to-day battles, triumphs, resiliency that we as Black folks experience, and the need for diversity and inclusion and social justice conversations to also include mental health considerations. So I'll be talking more about that later, but just really, really honored to share space with everyone tonight. Also, sorry, last thing, almost forgot. I proudly, look, I just found my plunge shirt. Yes, just found my plunge shirt from way back when. Also just got married 2 months ago. So in moving all of my stuff to our new spot here, going through all the old stuff, was able to find my shirt from way back when. So I want to make sure I give a shout out to all my fellow plunge folks.
And your wife.
Yeah, like she probably should give a shout out to my wife, Yessie, who probably be watching this later if she's not tuned in right now. But yes, I love you, Yessie.
All right. And since everyone else did and I forgot to do it, I lived in Walsh Hall, so any Walsh Nights, Walsh Wild Women, you know, that's who we are. All right, so let's get started with some of our pre-submitted questions. I know that we're going to get to some live questions soon, so please go ahead and drop your questions down in the chat, whichever platform you're looking on or you're watching us on, so that way we can get to those. But for the first question, so we all know, y'all have all mentioned it, this has been one heck of a year, from COVID first forcing the world into quarantine, a racial reckoning that we've never seen before in the world, the 2020 election, the siege of the Capitol by extremists, and of course, COVID remains, and of course, we got this crazy weather, and yeah. So what has the past year been like for you all, and how have you been managing your wellness through it? Y'all are polite, so I'm gonna Lene, we're gonna start with you.
Sure. So it's really interesting. I think what 2020 showed me was that we have the capacity for resilience that I don't think that we knew that we had. For those of us that survived the year, at least for me, it has really reignited this fire inside of me of I survived, I made it through. I made it through a lot of things that a lot of people didn't. And it's actually allowed me to turn inward and say, okay, what things have I been taking for granted prior to 2020? How have I been neglecting my mental health? How have I been neglecting my physical health? How have I been taking certain things for granted that I really could have lost at any point over the year? And so 2020 for me was about a deeper level of self-reflection in ensuring that moving forward, I'm all in 100%. I'm all into my calling, my giftings, my passions, what I've been placed on this earth to do. I literally can't afford to take a back seat. I can't afford to take anything for granted, because we never know when, with all the craziness that happened in 2020, we never know when the things that we do have can be taken away from us.
I'm gonna jump in just because you said something there, Lene, that really resonated in my heart about the reflection from a place of gratitude that we survived and that we're here. And I know as we opened with, we all know someone who isn't here anymore. And so to hold them and honor them by continuing to show gratitude for our survival. And I think for me, it also opened my heart to deeper reflection around saying like, okay, I survived. Now, how do I want to live? How do I want to be intentional, to be healthy in all aspects in a very holistic way? I want to obviously maintain my mental health, but for me, like not being able to get to the gym as regularly, I've needed to go on like random walks for no reason, just being outside. And even with that, knowing that I have to wear a mask and be healthy to keep myself healthy and others healthy. So it's the last year has been a big year of intention for me and being very, very particular about who and how I want to spend my life. And I think as I was sharing with my fellow panelists earlier here, that prior to 2020 starting, I had just got engaged, and we hadn't had any particular plans for a pandemic wedding. But honestly, between Kobe dying and the pandemic, we're like, look, we need to do this. We want to live together, and now is the time to really prioritize life, because it's finite. And yeah, it's just really special to reflect that way.
What about you, Yolanda?
Yeah. I was kind of listening to everybody else. My mantra is life is short. And I swear this year is actually what proved that to be the case. So for me, it's interesting. I was miserable for a while, and for a variety of reasons. Very toxic work environment. And then just the notion of the year, and the notion that I was grounded when I'm somebody who's gone every month. And I got depressed. So I actually did start seeing my therapist again. And it was the best thing ever, because truth is I'm about to, and I can't say it right now, but I'm about to make a pivot. And it's a pivot that I don't necessarily have a parachute under me, but I feel so free because I know life is short, and I'm going to make this decision regardless of what I may or may not have planned going forward. But as far as this year, so me too, I always worked out. Orange Theory Fitness buff, if anybody's familiar with that. So those closed down, and actually they're back open, but I still don't want to go to them. So I actually started working out. I grabbed some of my friends and I said, look, here's this big old mega church, and the parking lot's empty because the church is not open. I said, I will put together workouts, and we're going to work out, and we're going to work out in the summer. And yes, we were working out in 100-degree heat because we are tough. But we literally, first we started doing that, and it was only a couple of my ride or die, but then sometimes it would get to as big as 7 or 8 of us out there. And I had a particular plan. You know, we would warm up. There was always 3 blocks. There was always a weight block. And I just got really organized with the working out. And then I started recording it, and I literally would post it on social media. And then I started making videos of it. And you never know who's watching. And then, like I said, towards the end of the year, when it got really toxic at work, I removed myself from social media. And you never realized how many people were paying attention, because then I got all these messages that said, are you okay? I don't see any workouts. I miss your workouts. I just copy them and I do them later. And I'm like, really? You do? So, I mean, it made me feel good that other people were relying on that as well. The other thing that Milo just mentioned, I live in a neighborhood where I can just drive into my garage, and I did not know a single one of my neighbors except for the one that I'm really good friends with. And so I started walking actually in my neighborhood, and I'm telling you, I've been living here for 18 years and had never walked further than my mailbox. And I started walking miles. I mean, one day I walked 10 miles, and it's amazing how different everything looks on foot versus in your car. And I actually now know my neighbors, and that's been a great thing actually this week, because honestly, I'm in Texas and the week has been terrible, and we've all been checking on each other. And fortunately, I have not had any power issues, but we've had 4 neighbors whose pipes have burst. And the reality is I wouldn't know any of those people, but for this year, when I finally decided to get out and discover who and what was around me. So between the workouts, which, you know, turned into something that now people are pushing me like, maybe that's a side hustle. I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure out that. That's not the pivot, by the way. But
Thank you for clarifying that for us. We were like,
That's not the pivot. But it just, this whole year just made me do things differently. And I'm so excited because, again, the albatross that's been around my neck, I'm about to release it. And I never thought that I would do that. But seeing how short life is, I had a 40-year-old cousin who passed away from COVID as well this year. And I'm just like, I am 50. Why am I going to be miserable when I don't have to be miserable at all? We are blessed and we can do absolutely whatever we want. And this is the time. And so I'm actually excited. I've never been this excited. My therapist is like, oh my gosh, you're doing great now. And I'm not ashamed to say about the therapist because I love her, because she's the one who pushed me to think about this pivot. Because I probably would have just stayed in the same, what I like to call bad marriage, but it wasn't a marriage. It's the job, and just kept going because of the money. But that's become irrelevant to me. So the year has, in spite of all of the tragedy and losing my dad and all the other people and friends that we know, and not being able to do the things that I normally like to do, it's also just brought me all this growth, and being happy with myself and being excited turning 50. So, and getting back involved with Black Alumni, because I'll be quite frank with you, I had not done that either. So.
well, it's a great time for new beginnings. And
yeah.
So, all right. So our next question is for you, Dr. Milo. And actually, this is, I'm really glad we're going to be talking about this because I watched the first 2 sessions of this series, and there's a lot of conversation about mental health, and particularly in the first series where there were current Notre Dame students, seniors that were a part of that conversation. We're talking about their mental health. Specifically, I think it's Nikayla, who is the president of the Black Student Union, was saying that she was looking for alumni to actually talk to the students about mental health. So this is a plug for BA. I know the current chair, Shelley, was really encouraging everyone to log on to Irish Compass and make sure you're in that system, because that is the way for current students to connect with us, whether it be mentoring, thinking about their career, or whether it be finding alumni to talk to the current students on campus. So hopefully Nikayla is watching, but I wanted to let you know that, Dr. Milo. But again, I wanted to say congratulations on your new role. Congratulations to you. But in your previous tenure at the UC Irvine Counseling Center, where you were there for 8 years, how have you seen this year's events impact college students, and what are some strategies and tips you shared that you found to be helpful?
Yes. So I think I want to approach this in 2 ways: understanding mental health in a very general sense, and then mental health as it relates to college students' mental health. I think a lot of times the conversations have been like one or the other over the last year, and I think there's a lot of nuance. So in a general sense, on a general level here, there's kind of more health disparities that we've noticed over this last year. And when it comes to mental health, we've seen a lot of people be more open to discussions around mental health and working towards and through destigmatizing mental health. And so where I'm going with all of this is some of the concerns that we've had prior to March of 2020 have been exacerbated by social distancing, by quarantining, by anti-masking, and all the Karens of the country. And I say that in jest, but also in a lot of seriousness. So it's important to understand the overlap of all of our multicultural identities in the midst of a pandemic, because we know Black and Brown folks are disproportionately being affected in our physical health And that's no different from our mental health, because, and now I'll kind of transition to college students' mental health here. We're told to be strong, we're told to be resilient, we're told to keep going. And a lot of time, like, we get praise for being resilient, right? Like, we get praise for being able to persevere. But as a college student, like, how about, instead of systems praising resiliency, how about you just give me support, or you take away some of the toxic elements of this system that are having a negative impact on the mental health? So I think it's a combination of that. And again, going into the part of answering like what I recommend or what I've talked to my clients about, um, two particular things. One, it's so critical to have a sense of structure in our day. Um, UC Irvine, majority, if not all, classes have been just online, and a lot of those are pre-recorded. So, it's like, well, I can watch a lecture at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I'm just like, dude, like, first of all, let's just not do that. Second of all, let's actually create some a schedule for yourself, so you can kind of pretend like you're going to class, right? Like, the physical act connects to the mental act. And so you can sit down wherever you're sitting down to watch lecture, to create that structure and prepare yourself mentally. The other thing is that I also talk with clients and work through a sense of grief around what they have lost from the quote unquote previous normal. And so it's a sense of, literally going through the 5 stages of grief and loss: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. And then finally, we work towards a phase of acceptance, acknowledging that, hey, life may not go back to how it previously was. And if, for me as a Black man in America, I don't necessarily want it to go back to how it previously was, with not having access, for some of the community for healthcare. So let's create a sense of what acceptance looks like. And then so finally, we have, to kind of round out here, we have structure, we have working through grief and loss, and then finally, we have prioritizing joy. Because a lot of times when we're grieving, when we're feeling a sense of loss, we feel guilty for feeling happy. And I think part of the combination here of the diversity issues, we're talking about specifically white supremacy, and we're talking about different systems that weren't built with us in mind, but built on our backs. They try to work and push back against this feeling of joy that we may experience from time to time. So feeling good about feeling good, and knowing that sometimes one of the most productive things that we can do for ourselves is to rest and do nothing. And so I say that so directly and so much to Michaela and all college students when we're trying to navigate all of these different systems that are more performance based in some ways, to know that rest is productive and you deserve that rest.
And we probably need more of it right now, right? Just because even if you're not going out doing anything, it's just taking in the emotions of it. I mean, for me, even with social media, like, I know it's this balance of wanting to stay engaged, wanting to know what's going to happen with the, with the pandemic, whether it be with social unrest, people, dying due to police brutality, or, anything. Sometimes I have to literally, I'll go to Twitter and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel like that's enough, and just step away. But we don't have as high a tolerance as I think we probably had before, when we had a lot to distract us. Now it's just, especially if you're an empath, you're really holding on to all of this energy.
Absolutely. And to to address that social media part, like, there's a term I'm sure we've heard in various ways around doom scrolling, in the sense that that thumb just kind of keeps scrolling and keeps going and keeps going. And so one of the questions I encourage my clients to think about is, what is my purpose here on social media? And if we're in the business of trying to like gather information about the latest updates about COVID, around civil unrest, to be very intentional about, well, what question am I hoping to get answered? Because doom scrolling is just kind of your thumb going through. But if you're very intentional and aware about why and what is your why, then that's going to help mitigate some of those bursts of anxiety that come up when we're just scrolling and we see the latest Karen popping up for no reason.
Gosh, that's so timely considering the recent update about her, I think the charges being dropped because she completed her training. So anyhow.
Oh yeah, look, that's why this on my mind right now, but that's a
Yeah.
whole nother panel.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Milo. Lene, you are a parent. So how old are your children and how have they been managing all of this? And how have you been managing work with them in school and all of that?
Yeah, so my girls are 15, 11, and 8. So they are in
Wow.
three distinct developmental stages in their life right now, with my oldest in the second half of her freshman year in high school. And so with her dealing with her first year in high school, doing it at home. I mean, her first day of school for high school, she's in her pajamas in her room, like on an iPad, you know, helping her manage just expectations versus reality versus, okay, what is high school going to look for? What is it going to look like for her, you know, in comparison to what high school looks like before the pandemic. And then I have my 11-year-old who is in her last year of elementary school, and in the fall will be starting junior high. And then my 8-year-old who is still in the foundational levels of, you know, academic learning, of reading and writing and math and all of those things. And so I have to be honest, when the pandemic first started and school shut down, I was losing it. I was not keeping it together because I did not feel that my girls were getting the academic support, you know, the education that they really needed to help them in these stages, stages that they're in right now. So there was a lot of navigating. There was a lot of, I can't even begin to tell you just the amount of stress, you know, in balancing, especially my 8-year-old, you know, trying to keep her focused on a screen this big for 6 hours straight, like in the middle of my husband and I working from home and having our work to do. It wasn't pretty. And I know that I speak for a lot of other parents, especially working parents, working from home, having small kids that were doing school from home. It was not easy at all. I think the little bit of lift that we were able to get at the beginning of the summer, where a couple activities were able to open up a little bit, that really helped give the girls, we were just right on the brink of losing it, all of us. And then just the summer came, we were able to get outside. Some activities were able to open up that just gave us like that little bit of push that we needed to feel a little rejuvenated. But now with this school year first beginning, I actually did a Facebook Live with my mom, who is in education, who is in public education. She was in education for over 30 years. And I sat down with her and we had a conversation about preparing your home, preparing an environment to support your virtual learner, so that your virtual learner thrives at home and is still getting like the educational foundation that they need, despite the fact that they're learning from home. And that really helped to organize us. I love what you were saying, Milo, about like creating a schedule, creating organization. We were more prepared at the beginning of this school year to create environments where the girls could still learn and still thrive. And then we balanced that also with just really intentional family time. So not you in your room, you on like the computer, me over here, me over there, but creating more time of like sitting down together as a family, having a meal, going out as a family for a walk, as a family, taking a drive and going places, having conversations, turning off the electronics and the devices, and really interacting with each other. So in a sense, this pandemic really helped actually to bring us closer together and to really help my girls thrive academically. I mean, they all three of them shot up academic levels in terms of moving up, to certain like higher classes. And so thankfully, we've been able to balance and keep everything going and keep everyone thriving.
Great. So this conversation that you had with your mom, where you talked about how to set the structure, was that recorded? Because I think other people, maybe some people listening or watching the recording might benefit from that. How can they find that information out?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are not Facebook friends with me, then please go ahead and send me a friend request. The Facebook Live is still on my timeline. I'll definitely reshare it. We did a part 1 and a part 2, where we had the part 1 before the school year started, and then a couple months in, where my mom answered some questions and gave advice for parents who were struggling with some things now that the academic year had actually started. So please go ahead and send me a friend request on Facebook, Lene Urban, and I will reshare the recordings to those videos to the top of my timeline.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right, Yolanda. So in normal times, we know it's healthy to have some kind of balance and have activities outside of our normal work. And you are a longtime board member of more than 15 years with Wellbeing Cares, a health and human services agency in the greater Dallas area. How have you been able to maintain your connection to this organization and other things that are important to you during this past year?
Right. Yeah, I love Wellbeing Cares, actually. I don't think I would have stayed a board member as long as I have. I mean, because we feed people, we actually educate people, we help them get prepared for job interviews. The mantra is, we got to teach them how to fish, not just give them a fish, even though we do have a food pantry. But as a board, obviously everything went virtual. And I must say, I'm not sure the functioning of the board is as great virtually, because we have a lot of members who are not technically savvy. So the board members, the board meetings initially were kind of disruptive, but as time moved forward, we got better with that. I will say we have missed the camaraderie, and the discussion has been different virtually. There is nothing like face-to-face contact, but we want to be safe. But what's been interesting is I was worried about our fundraising because we were not able to have our annual gala or anything like that. But virtually, people have been extremely generous. We probably have a better or an equal budget this year. I don't know if I don't know what it is, but people became more generous. So I've totally stayed connected with Wellbeing Cares. I've actually even, because I have a little flexibility in my day from working at home, I've been able to now actually go up there and actually volunteer, where before I worked too far away to ever actually go in the building. So I've gotten more connected because I'm now at home and I'm in my neighborhood where I can actually actually participate. Some other things, I was involved with some other boards, and what I realized was that I couldn't do everything. And so I actually had to let some go. I was on the American Cancer Society board, and I realized that, just like everybody says, we cannot be superhuman and super women and men. And so sadly, I let that one go, but because we just have to make tough choices. But we've been able to stay connected. I've been impressed. I've been impressed with our executive director. I've been impressed with all of my colleagues who are on the board, because we've been intentional, because right now is when people need the most help. Right now is when people need the most support, especially lower income and poor people. And that is my other passion, helping people. And this has been one way that I have been able to do that and do it safely.
Did anyone else have any anything, activities or clubs that they were a part of that they've remained connected to? I know, Lene, you've been busy. You have enough. Dr. Milo, did you have any? I mean, you did have a job change, but I wanted to open that question up to you as well.
Yeah, so again, going back to the question about combining mental health and college students' mental health, one of the initiatives I brought to UC Irvine was Wabruta, which some of us may know is Swahili for brotherhood. So in 2013, when I started at Irvine, one of the first things I did as an intern was to bring that group, the ideology behind that group, to campus. And so for 8 years, being able to run and facilitate a group for Black men, not necessarily a therapy group, but just a space for Black men to have and kind of like barbershop talk. And I think even when we started to pivot to be virtual, the brothers really still appreciated just having that space and having connection. And I think now it's not a matter of meeting or spending time with folks in person, but we still need connection, even if that's FaceTime, Facebook, Zoom, whatever. We just need something. And for college students, I think that's even more important.
Thank you. All right, so we're about to get into a live question, but first we got one more pre-submitted question for Lene in terms of your profession as a nutrition and lifestyle coach who has personally experienced being overweight after struggling with emotional eating and food addiction. Being at home much more these days, along with the stresses of being in a pandemic, are surely enough to trigger emotional eating for a first time or to reignite any kind of previous food addictions that anyone may have had. So what are some nutrition and stress management tips you can give to help us manage emotional eating right now?
Yeah, so that's a tough one, right? Because food is the most just easily accessible comfort. Food is, it's very difficult to create boundaries, right, around not using food as an emotional crutch. And I can't tell you, I mean, every woman that I'm supporting right now in my weight loss group, like the weight just started hemorrhaging over 2020, because of everything that was going on. And I know that they're not alone. I don't know. I actually really don't know anyone personally who didn't struggle over 2020. And I know that there are people out there that really doubled down like Yolanda did and got really serious with their fitness, but a lot of people struggled. I think for me, it was really, really important to maintain, to be really intentional about creating space for rest, like Milo was saying earlier. And I just have to say that to everyone watching, especially to college students, that creating intentional space for rest, if we don't do that, then everything that we're consuming mentally and emotionally will come out. It will manifest physically. And for many of us, that will be numbing pain, numbing anxiety, numbing stress with food. And so it was really, really important for me to make sure that I was creating multiple periods throughout my day, morning, noon, and evening, for self-reflection, for mindfulness, for journaling, making sure that anything that I was internalizing or carrying or holding inside, that I was able to bring it up and bring it out onto paper, and not allow certain things, not allow those things to be swept under the rug and buried underneath. Because when I did that, what I found was then I was able to create some boundaries around food. Then I was able to stick to certain like guidelines that I created for myself that would allow me to still, be able to live my life, still be able to enjoy the foods that I love without becoming out of control again. And so I would say that definitely for anyone that's still struggling with stress eating and with emotional eating carried over from the pandemic, I don't think we realize exactly what 2020 did to us. especially people of color. I don't think that we understand and know the full extent of what 2020 did. And I think that there's still a lot of carryover of unhealthy habits, unhealthy coping mechanisms from 2020 into this year. So I would greatly encourage anyone that's watching, if you are dedicated to start a diet and to start working out and to really be intentional, invest time and money into your health and fitness, do not forget to add in that piece in your day where you are taking anything that you might be internalizing, create those periods to bring them up and out, write them down, create times of rest in your day so that you can actually be consistent with the diet that you start, so that you can be consistently motivated to continue exercising. That's what I did in 2020, and that's definitely my advice for everyone.
Sounds a lot like being very mindful, because I know there are times, busy, stressful times when I'm not mindful. Next thing you know, it's like, oh wait, what did I just put in my mouth? I said no more. And I know, Dr. Milo, you talked a lot about mindfulness. You did some, you've come back to campus and talked to the Balfour Hesburgh Scholars. I know you and I were both Balfour alumni. So I don't know if you have anything to say about mindfulness right now, just to kind of go along with what Lene just shared.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a personal anecdote here. So to be a licensed psychologist, you have to pass this like 5-hour exam, 250 multiple choice questions. You can take a break if you want to, but the clock just keeps running. And I had actually failed that like quite a few times. Not going to put myself out there and say how many times, but I failed a few times. And so every time I failed, every time you take it, it's $687.50. And every time I talk about this, I always say how pissed off I was that they had the audacity to have 50 cents in there. Like you can't just round up, like for real. So anyway, I digress. Where I'm going with this is during this time of studying to pass this exam, I was still seeing clients full time. And I was still getting great feedback from my supervisors. I was still having a positive impact in their lives. But my test anxiety was really, really beating me down. And I've had test anxiety probably since that first psych exam at Notre Dame. So where I'm going with this is mindfulness for me has allowed me to slow my mind down, to slow my anxiety down enough to actually be focused and be centered. And the key to mindfulness, similar to kind of a theme we've all talked about in different ways, is to approach life with a non-judgmental attitude. So one of the definitions is to pay attention on purpose in any given moment with a non-judgmental attitude. So even though I failed that exam, not judging myself or beating myself up too much. And so for me, mindfulness has been kind of synonymous with intentionality, but also self-compassion. And I think a lot of us have been so highly competitive. So, and again, for college students in particular, who I speak with often, they're just feeling like, well, I got to pass and I got to get an A because I want to do X, Y, and Z in my career. And so what I often talk about is the fastest way to get somewhere is to slow down. And so when we can still our minds, when we can still our hearts, that actually is going to allow us to get further in our careers, academically, blah, 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 than if we're just in like kind of sprint mode all the time. So for me, mindfulness is, like I said, synonymous with self-compassion, but it also means freedom.
And I bet I can imagine someone's like, wait, that doesn't make sense to go faster, slow down. And I guess I would invite anyone saying that just to try it. Just try it. Try it a couple of times and see if it works.
And let's be clear though, like the first couple times you're going to be horrendous at it. And that's actually the point. Like you're supposed to suck at it. So that's the objective here, is the opportunity to be kind to ourselves. It's not going to be easy at first, and it's not supposed to be.
Can I just say that these are good habits? I mean, for the college students listening, good habits to develop now, because once you get into this world, I mean, we're having to remind ourselves to do that, right? When you work for an employer, I mean, they want you to produce. So as much as you're willing to give, they're going to be happy for you to give it. So you're going to have to be that gateway, that check to keep balance for yourself. All right, so we got a question for Yolanda, the Miss World Traveler. Is there anything you can share on what your extensive travel has shown or taught you about, specifically about Black people, that you may not have gotten otherwise? That is a good question.
That is a good question. Tough one. I, well, okay, I have a couple things, but the main thing, and I think I want everybody to know this, that Black people or people of color are catching hell everywhere. It's just not here. And if you travel, you will notice that. I'll give an example of that. I was in Cuba, and I've been there a couple of times. But there's a hotel called the Hotel Nacional, and it used to be the grandeur hotel. It was where all the mafiosos and all those folks went before the Cuban Revolution. And so it's still a really big hotel in Cuba. And I always make it a habit, I'm gonna meet some locals, and that's my preference, because I want to get a different view. And I want a more Afrocentric view of a country. And we were gonna go have drinks at the Hotel Nacional. And, you know, when we're out of the country, we're Americans. And they obviously know we're Black, but we are Americans. And my friend told me, he's like, they're not gonna let me in there. They don't let Black Cubans in Hotel Nacional. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And he's like, oh, no, seriously. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And of course, I ignored what he said, because I was like, this can't be true. And sure enough, my friend that I was traveling with, she and I could go have drinks, and they did not let him in. So again, Black people are catching hell everywhere. But one thing I will say, and this isn't just for Black people, get a passport. What having a passport does for us as well as Americans, I think we just have such a better perspective and appreciation of everything that we have here. Americans, and we know this, are so entitled. I believe white Americans even feel more entitled. But if you go and travel and you see the world, you learn that that's not the case. The second reason, and this isn't directly related to the question, but it's something I want to share about getting a passport. So I'm also a part of this travel group, and a group of us were going to Panama for MLK weekend. And, you know, it's a long weekend, just go hang out. Panama has a very big African related history. And I ended up changing at the last minute and not going. Well, there was an accident, and the car that all of the folks were on drove off the road, and there were fatalities, and it was bad. And the reason why I say everybody needs to have a passport is because people's family members could not come get their loved ones in the foreign country. They had to rely on us and those of us who could get down there, people's parents. And so I don't care if no one travels in your family, but you do, make sure they have a passport. It was heartbreaking because the embassy could do nothing. No one could do anything. So I don't care if you never use it, get one and have it. And then lastly, what has my travel shown me? So let's say in Africa, where especially like in Kenya, which is one of my favorite places, and South Africa. Well, then you get into it's all about economics and classism. So you know, you got a whole darn city like in Nairobi that is pretty much, for the most part, Wakanda. It's Black. but there is a hierarchy. I mean, it felt like India in a way, where education absolutely matters. And if you don't have that, then that already puts you in a different caste system. So where we deal with white privilege and the differences in the United States, there where everyone is Black, we always find a way to create these differences. And oftentimes they're economic. They're economic here in the United States as well, but quite honestly, we always walk in the door and we're going to be Black. But what I noticed is there is that unfortunate tendency to separate because of economics in some of the Black countries on the continent. But to end it, I don't want to end it on a bad note. One of the things that always makes me smile and makes me feel blessed is even when I go to the most impoverished or just it's more of a third world country, people are happy and people enjoy life, whatever that life is. And it just reminds me again, what the heck are we complaining about over here? Now, I'm not talking about the social justice or the police. I mean, in general, as Americans, if you saw what other people went through, you would not do that. And they respect us. They probably respect us a little too much, quite honestly. I think this insurrection on January 6th has taken us down a few pegs, which I think is a good thing. But I even had my friend from Iran, because I've been to Iran too, reach out to me because this debacle that's happened in Texas and failure, which is really a people failure and a leadership failure, made it all the way to Iran. So they were checking on me to make sure that I was okay. We are still thought of globally. We're not thought of very highly globally, but people still pay attention. And what I noticed, no matter where I go, everyone always seems smarter than we do. They know what's going on around the world. We barely know what's going on in our own city or state. And so, and especially Black folks are just smart everywhere else. And if we encouraged and set those high expectations here, like they do for themselves there, it would be so much better. But I'm just always impressed that everyone knows so much more than we do. Everybody speaks 4 or 5 languages, and we barely speak English well sometimes. And it always just embarrasses me because they're sitting there speaking 4 or 5 different languages, and I got 1.5 that I can speak. And so it's just eye-opening. I get excited, and I get excited that despite their conditions, they are happy. They don't take anything for granted, and we cannot do that either.
I think something that you said at the beginning of that kind of segment of what you were saying is the key is entitled, is the entitlement that we, I think, as Americans have. And so one of the reasons why it's so important to travel, like you said, get the passport and go and experience other cultures, Black people and other cultures, is to see the reality. And then maybe you'll see like, wow, I'm kind of taking this for granted, and perhaps we'll appreciate much more the resources that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not to say that we are not lacking of resources, especially in our communities, which it doesn't make sense given the wealth of this country. But if you want to see a lack of resources, you go to other places, and it will just blow your mind. But those people make a way out of no way. And we've been doing that forever as well. But I think we got to teach our kids, and I have none. So Lene, you got to teach your kids that, we just don't have to talk about the civil rights movement. It's not done. It's not over. People are still needing to make a way out of no way. And we got so much work to do.
And hopefully some of the current students watching to be, encouraged. Hopefully they're taking advantage, well, not now, but hopefully they will be taking advantage of study abroad.
I hope so. They got to go abroad. Oh, they have to go abroad.
That was one of the best things I did as an undergrad, was study in London for 4 months.
Yes, got to do it.
Yeah.
And actually, it was on the first segment of this series, which I know is posted on the Black at ND Facebook page. So if you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. But I believe it was Shelley, the board of the Black Alumni, the chair of the Black Alumni Board, was talking about the Fraser Thompson Scholarship and how the funds can be utilized. And apparently you can utilize those funds in a lot more ways than back when we were at Notre Dame. So if you want to go abroad and, maybe, shorten some funds there, definitely reach out. I believe Mr. Ben Finley, senior, I believe he shared that Consuela and the Office of Student Enrichment at Notre Dame is the contact. So for anyone listening, definitely be sure to check that resource out. Okay, we got another question. Lene, food is such an integral part of the Black family. Some might even say that it's the soul of the family. A lot of foods that we eat are not the healthiest. How were you able to pivot from these comfort foods into a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I actually am one of my clients right now. She's young. She's, just a few years out of undergrad, and she's struggling with her weight. She's struggling with her health. She has health issues that someone in their 20s should not have. And it is all because of how she was raised with her food. She was raised in a Southern home. And that is how her family expressed love to each other. That's how they expressed love to her. And that's all she knows. And so it's very difficult. It's so difficult to remove the emotion from that. And that's really why I became addicted to food and why I became an emotional eater. Because when I was growing up, food was the love language in my family. Food, just everything was centered around food. And what happened was that my brain connected happiness to food, which meant that I could not experience joy or happiness if I didn't eat. And then when I was feeling down, I needed food to pick me up. And that's just how I grew up. And it just got worse and worse and worse when I went away to Notre Dame and I started missing my family. Food was my comfort, and that relationship with food just continued to solidify itself into adulthood. And that's exactly what led to the health issues that finally had me stop and say, if I don't make a change now, I will die. I'll die early. I won't live long enough to see my girls grow up. So I think the first step is the decision. We have to decide whether or not we want to live our best and healthiest lives possible. Yes or no? That decision has to be made first. If we decide yes, then the second step is to seek the love and the joy, not within the food itself, but within what that food actually represents, which is family and which is community. We don't have to consume the foods that we grew up eating every single day, 3 or 4 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We don't have to do that to remember and to experience the love and the joy of our families and our communities. And this is, I was actually just having this conversation with my weight loss group, is that the joy is not in the food itself. The joy and the love, it's within each other. So that's the second step, is just emotionally and mentally separating, realizing that the love is between, you and I, it's between all of us. And the food is just the place where we gather around to exchange that love, right? And so step 3 then is we create periods and we create boundaries where we can still enjoy the foods that we love, enjoy, family time together, but we do it on occasion. We do it on special occasions, but we also create other periods and other times where then we're fueling ourselves with healthy foods, right? Because living a healthy lifestyle is not all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, I give up all the soul food and I never have mac and cheese and fried chicken again. That's not what it is. It's about balance. It's about creating periods where you're fueling your body properly, and so that you can enjoy those periods where you're eating the foods that you love so much with the people that you love. So I think those 3 steps are definitely what I followed to change my healthy lifestyle. And after just practice, trial and error, also taking some of my favorite recipes from the foods that I grew up eating, and then just swapping out some ingredients here and there to just make it a little lighter, make it a little leaner, right? So that I can eat it, I can still enjoy it, it still tastes great, but it's not doing as much damage to my body as before, right? So taking that step as well, and living from that place of balance, really reimagining and repositioning the love away from the food, centering it back to the people that you love, having some healthy alternatives, being able to still enjoy those things on occasion, but the priority, the majority of the time, you are fueling yourself with the proper macro and micronutrients that your body requires to live, requires to function.
Takes it back to what you said before in terms of that intentionality, right? Be intentional about what's happening, slow down, make a better choice. And it also, what I'm hearing you say is baby steps, right? Little by little steps instead of going from 0 to 100.
Yes, and that's another big thing that I think that a lot of people struggle with, and they become very discouraged. They give up on their journey because they want to wake up tomorrow and they want to be different. They want everything to be fixed. And that's just not reality. Reality is small little changes at a time, over time, that lead to a massive lifestyle change in the long run, but that still gives you that balance to be able to enjoy both.
Thank you. So Dr. Milo, so we know you've been at a college campus for 8 years and you still love the kids, you still love the students, right? But your new role now, you're senior manager of diversity and inclusion and community outreach for Belkin International Incorporated. So you're kind of shifting to the big kids, okay? That was a joke. So, what are some strategies that, Black men, well into their, career, and women, do you think that they can employ to attend to their well-being individually and collectively, knowing the different stresses, right, of already being in the career and, or maybe looking for work, right? But all of that.
All of that. All right. How much time we got? So, let's see. The first piece I always start with is to validate the full range of whatever we're experiencing. And knowing that a lot of that, particularly as Black folks, is due to systemic pressures, whether that's the job place, whether that's the school place, combination thereof, or in our towns, our cities. Being able to be okay with not being okay. And what I mean by that is because of the history and the socio-political history of being Black in America, we've often wrongly needed to equate survival and strength with the lack of vulnerability. Because if I'm vulnerable, then I'm opening myself up to these systemic pressures, and I'm opening myself up to violence by these systems. So a lot of the work that I've done with Black folks on an individual basis in Wabruda, like I mentioned, is to really acknowledge like the pain that we're experiencing is not our fault, but the healing is our opportunity. And to have that healing, because we've been pained and murdered on a system level, we also need that healing to take place on a system and a collective level. So when we're talking about the privilege, I'll be very specific here, the privilege that we have and we hold with our gender identity as Black men, we also have to understand that, yeah, that balances out with our marginalized identity of being Black in America. So where I'm going with this is that we have to hold our privileged identities with our marginalized identities to aid in this healing. So a lot of times, brothers, whether that's barbershop culture, whether that's college culture combination, there's this pitting of, well, I got to put the sisters down to feel better about my identity as a Black man, or I need to somehow like espouse toxic masculinity to feel better about who I am. And so a lot of the work is around saying, no, let's take a step back, really understand what you're doing here. And again, the healing has to happen on a collective level. So when we're talking about employing to attend to their well-being, also knowing that there's a combination of well-being from mental health and physical health, and that it's okay, like I said, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is a strength. And so if you're pushing back against all these systems and you're trying your best just to make it on a day-to-day, I want you to be able to tell me like, hey, I'm not doing okay. And similarly, sometimes it's hard for us to check in on our loved ones because we don't want to be up in their business. We don't want to feel like we're being too nosy or we're intruding. But I'm going to say this very, very clearly and directly. I want you to be comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations, because I would much rather have a friend be pissed at me for a year, to be angry at me for 5 years, than to have that friend no longer be here because they died by suicide. And so it's necessary for us to listen twice and speak once. It's necessary for us to hold space with others and to not perpetuate these various systems that don't have our well-being in mind. And then, Jatan, did you say there was a second question about like advice for like post-college, or we doing that?
Well, I was going to get there.
Okay.
Well, because we've been talking a lot about, I think it was actually Yolanda speaking about her getting ready to make a pivot and all that this great career that she's had. And so it did make me think early on about the college students who are at Notre Dame preparing for a career, right? So you have seniors who are looking for employment, but you also have underclassmen that are looking for those summer opportunities. And so one of the questions that came in from our viewers on YouTube is in terms of this anxiety, particularly that seniors are having, but I think it's all students really, but a special kind of anxiety for the seniors. What kind of tips would you give them as they approach, the job market?
Yeah, great, excellent question, because this is a really unique time to be thinking about post-grad plans. Similar to last year's class, but still in an ongoing sense. I think where I always go is to feel where I can ground myself when I'm feeling anxious about whatever. How can I be grounded in me? How can I be grounded in my truth? And how can I be grounded in my values? Knowing that if plan A doesn't work out, it's not even about going to plan B or creating a hierarchy, but being guided more by our values. Because if I can say, hey, I want to get to a certain place, and there's so many different pathways to get there, if this job doesn't line up, or this job or this internship doesn't line up, that's okay. It's not a matter of if, but when. And when I find that opportunity, when I maybe even create that pathway, that's going to allow me to, again, slow down enough to be guided by my values. And I'm not gonna, this isn't me trying to sugarcoat, this isn't me trying to invalidate the very real pain that people are experiencing. I think it's an opportunity nonetheless to think about how do we ground ourselves in our values, and some of that anxiety management around the uncertainty of the future is to be that much more focused on controlling the controllables. So much of future planning is outside of our control. So instead, we validate that, we normalize that, we take a non-judgmental attitude to understand that, and then we reframe that to focus on what is within our control. So our health, our sleep, what we're consuming, what we're not consuming, how we're connecting with other people to nourish our spirit and to love on us, that's going to allow for more patience and more growth than just focusing on, I got to line this job or that's it, or I got to get this internship or I'm never going to do nothing with the rest of my life. I'm just going to be some bum. Like, no, that's so hypercritical, and that's not what I want for our people.
And what you said there in terms of, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. I think that's
Yes.
a bite-sized chunk that, to keep in your minds. You're gonna get a job. It's gonna happen. A lot of students are experiencing this right now. Not only students or students that are about to graduate, but even adults are out of work right now. So this is, it feels like it's you. And it's always easier to say, like, say these things, but you're gonna experience it, right? You're gonna have some anxiety. It's just about managing anxiety. I know, Dr. Mata, listening to you speak, I think it was to Balfour students a couple of years ago. One of the things you talked about was just accepting that life is hard, right? Like, you have to.
Yes.
That life is hard. There's nothing we're gonna say that's gonna make you less anxious. Just know that it's shared experience, and it's not about if it's gonna happen, it's when it's gonna happen. And one thing you can do, I think sometimes being in motion kind of helps curb that anxiety in a sense. So what can you do now to help prepare you for your career? What skill sets can you learn independently on your own? What can you teach yourself? There's a lot of video learning. Like, those are things that you can do. So that way, when the job postings line up, like, you have additional skill sets beyond just your degree. And that will make you, just suit you right into the position. So that's my little 2 cents that I would add.
That's a whole quarter.
Thank you. So Yolanda, exercise is back on the agenda right now. We want to know some tips that you have that you could share with people on exercising at home.
Okay, I have 2 really quick tips. So the first one is what I call the bathroom workout. What do we do multiple times a day? It's go to the bathroom. And so you guys might think this is weird, but I was reading some fitness person's website, and they keep between, and it obviously depends on your level of strength, but I keep between 5 and 10 pound weights in my bathroom. So every time I go to the bathroom, I have a list of 15 arm exercises, and I do 1 set before I go to the bathroom. So literally every time I go to the bathroom, and I'm serious, we all
That's
do.
Smart.
And so you're gonna walk into it and put the weights in front of the toilet, meaning you've got to pick them up and move them. And that means you'll at least do that little bit. If you do nothing else, every time you go to the bathroom, you will have done some arm exercises. And then the second tip is there's this really, really amazing website. And it's actually the website that I use to put together my group workouts with my friends. And it's free. And it's called darebee.com, DAREBEE.com. And it has more than 1,500 workouts. And I mean, they are set with the reps, the number of times you should do them, how you should do them. And it's just a really good free website. Whatever part of your body you want to focus on. If you like HIIT workouts, you like them timed, but it's a free website and it's out there, and anybody can go to it and do it. But I'm telling you, the bathroom one is the one.
Look,
Michelle Obama arms, and so I keep it that way. So the bathroom, no matter what.
This is probably the best definition of multitasking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also breaking it up in steps, right? Like, if you're not someone that wants to do a whole big workout, but you're doing it gradually.
exactly right. You'd be surprised what just if going to the bathroom 7 times a day and doing a rep of 10 bicep curls or 10 tricep kickbacks, you're getting something out of that. But it isn't freaking your mind out and saying, oh, I got to do a whole 30-minute workout. You're not. Just do it throughout the day. It doesn't require that much. We just got to move sometimes.
Absolutely. I'm missing that. I mean, I think I've even since the pandemic and working from home, and remember March 13th was the last time I was in the office.
Yes.
It's just getting in the car to drive to work. Like you miss that, thankful, blessed to be able to work from home. But I did realize like, wow, I was really counting on that a lot to just get out and see some light,
Yep.
Yeah. Gosh, so we are coming toward the end of our time. We have 5 minutes and we still have questions coming in. I want to give everyone an opportunity to share some closing comments and how people can get in contact with them. So I guess, Milo, we have this last question. Let's start off with you. Maybe you can kind of do a little bit of everything all in your last spiel. So what mindfulness tips do you have to deal with stress and negative self-image?
Man, that is the question. Yeah, like in terms of thinking about well-being, that is the question. As it relates to stress part, I think one of the themes that I want us to reflect on from today is that it's not a matter of trying to say, I'm never going to be stressed, I'm never going to be anxious, but more so about how we manage that. And I think so much we almost view having feelings as failure, or we think about being stressed as failure. And so if we can normalize stress and not push back so much against it, that helps ease a lot of mental health concerns. As it relates to self-image, I think, again, a combination of stress, of body image concerns that as we've talked about, self-image kind of encapsulates perhaps body image and feelings of self-worth. And so what I really want to drive home here as a final point is that our self-worth is not dependent on our work or our productivity. So I'm gonna say that again for the folks in the back here. Our self-worth and self-image is not dependent on our work. We're brilliant Black folks. We are productive, high performers, and that still doesn't equate to our self-worth. Our self-image will never increase, nor will it ever decrease based on the amount of productivity or performance that we have. So when we can internalize this sense of our inherent value being just who we are, period, not because we got a 4.0, not because we're on academic probation, that our self-value is never going to increase or decrease. If you can really embrace that, that will help, again, improve and maintain mental health. And honestly, as I close out, I just want to share so much love for folks who are continuing to fight the good fight and continuing to be resilient, and that the pain that you experience is not your fault, and the healing is your opportunity.
So actually, what they say about Black people and how we on what is it, CP time? We all of a sudden now we have some questions that are coming through the chat, and so board member BA board member Amber is saying, gosh, we really want to get some answers to these questions. So if y'all does everyone have a few more minutes where y'all can hang back a little bit? I know this is balancing time. Just a couple of more questions, so then everyone can officially wrap up and let everyone know how they can get in contact with them. But this one I think is very, very important, which is, can you speak about the stigma in seeking therapy in the Black community? I mean, it's still there, right? And it definitely shouldn't be there in a time like we're in now. Like this is this is physical health, right? Like we actually mental health, as y'all have said many different times. But can you please speak to that?
Oh, Lord, again, how much time I got?
I know, right?
Big old question. My goodness. All right. So to cut to the chase, how I want to open this up from the heart. Going to therapy for me was one of the best things I could do for my life. And to be very, very clear here, going to therapy was one of the best things that I could do to be a therapist. And I share that to frame the rest of my answer here from a place of understanding that going to therapy is an opportunity, can be strength-based, not just when the you know what has hit the fan. So we're not just always going to the dentist, to the doctor, to the eye doctor when we have a concern, right? Like sometimes it's preventative. Well, healthcare in America sucks, but that's besides the point. It's supposed to be preventative. And so what I want us to start to think about is, well, why is mental health and why is therapy different? And a lot of times that's been because of our mistrust of healthcare systems that aren't built for us. We don't have representation in these systems. So I think to work through this stigma, we have to take a strengths-based approach to understand this is an opportunity. This is how I get healthy, and my health is tied to my freedom. So if we really want to get free, if we really want to have justice, we also have to be healthy. And to be able to express ourselves, to be able to let that out, that is our freedom. And that's an opportunity for us to really grow and to be stronger.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yolanda, a little bit earlier, you said, I think you mentioned just kind of calling out websites or people that have really helped you during this time in the pandemic. So I just want to invite anyone in terms of any tips, any people in particular that have really come through for you in the pandemic. Who would you like to shout out? Lene, her husband. Hello. No.
I would just like to say one thing, especially, I mean, Dr. Milo preached really when he said a word on the whole therapy piece. You know, I've always been the listener and the strongest of all my friends, and the most direct, and sometimes the most harsh, but they know that they can always rely on me to tell them the truth. But the reality is, what I will tell people is check on your strong friends, because we need to be checked on too. Sometimes that's just a coping mechanism, but don't think that those people don't also need for you to check on them. You miss those are the exact people that need it sometimes the most, because they're so weary and so tired of taking care of everyone else, their family, their friends, their colleagues, and being that rock that they have nothing left to give to themselves. And then the only other thing I'd like to say is, here's another mantra, but Milo made me think about this again. So my mantra is work to live, not live to work. It is about living. Working is what it is, and hopefully you find something passionate, but you're working to live. You're not living to just work.
Amen. Amen. So Lene, you mentioned earlier about eating healthily, and we have someone that's asking about just how hard, difficult it is sometimes, depending on where you live, to get access to healthy foods, and sometimes it could be expensive. So I guess it's kind of like a two-pronged question. One is, how can they eat well, with this challenge of getting healthy food, and also how important is nutrition versus working out to losing weight?
Yeah, those are both very good questions, especially with the disparity, definitely in a lot of communities, and not being able to access healthy foods, or even if they do have access to healthy foods, I mean, the quality of those foods sometimes can end up being even worse. And so I know this is definitely one of the things that we talked about as we were preparing for this panel, And one of the things that I mentioned is that there actually are organizations and companies that are actively, intentionally trying to bring healthier foods into underserved communities. Now, unfortunately, these companies and organizations don't have big marketing budgets, so you won't see an advertisement on TV for them. You won't see a Facebook ad. You won't see an Instagram ad, as you're scrolling, but there are organizations that are out there. And I know that one of the organizations that I actually use is called Imperfect Foods. It used to be called Imperfect Produce, but now they're expanding to offer more than produce. And what they do is they partner up with farmers and grocers for food that big chain grocery stores reject because the apples have a spot on them, or the tomatoes are not bright red, right? So we have these grocery stores all over the country that are actually rejecting a lot of produce, a lot of foods, and not accepting those foods from the farmers. So this company, Imperfect Foods, they partner with these farmers and they take them and they deliver. They have delivery services where they deliver fresh produce and other lean meats and dairy and other things. And this company specifically, they are very dedicated to feeding children who are struggling with hunger and to serving underserved communities. So where there's a will, there's a way, right? Especially when we go back and we talk about, the decision, are you going to fight for your health or not? If you're going to fight, and what Yolanda mentioned, you have to make a way, right? You have to make a way out of no way. We have that in our blood. We are capable of doing that. We are capable of searching for local and national organizations that are actually trying to help our communities. So I would definitely encourage you to check out Imperfect Foods. One of the things that I was thinking about, contemplating after that discussion, I was thinking about these organizations. Definitely, if you're someone who doesn't have access to healthy foods, I would definitely advise you to form a community. Try to connect with other people at work or at school or in your neighborhood who are also looking to make healthy changes. And if we can bring multiple minds together, we can bring multiple ideas together. I was actually watching a short documentary of a gentleman in Detroit, in the city of Detroit, who started buying up abandoned lots of land and turning those lots of land into community farms and raising that produce and serving it to local charities and local organizations. So there is always, it may seem, when we look from the outside, it may seem like it's a desert. It may seem like we don't have access, but if we just do a little bit of digging, there are people in our communities and surrounding our communities who have resources to be able to get us access to healthy food. So I would definitely suggest doing research, trying to connect with other like-minded people. And if after you've done all of that, if you still cannot find access to healthy food, then it may be that your calling is to bring that healthy food into your community. Because if you're looking for it in your community and you can't find it, that means that there are others that are looking for it as well. So that just may be your purpose. That may be the thing that you were placed on this earth to do, is for your community to bring that healthy food into your community. So that's what I would say to address the first question. And then the second one, how important is nutrition when it comes to losing weight as opposed to exercise? I know Yolanda can attest, right, to the fact that the biggest changes when we're talking about the changes to the body, right? When we're talking about losing weight, toning up, building muscle, feeling good, having a long, healthy life, it starts and it ends in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
It starts and ends in the kitchen. Exercise is phenomenal for physical strength, for maintaining muscle mass, especially as you age. We lose every 10 years, we lose our muscle mass, and we don't age and we don't get older because that's just what happens when you age. We get older and we start experiencing all of these physical ailments and health issues because we're losing our muscle mass. So exercise is essential. Exercise is the fountain of youth. You'll stay, I look at Yolanda and I'm like, okay, hashtag goals, right? Like if you exercise and you're physically active, I mean, that'll keep you young forever. But your food, your nutrition is actually what creates the physical change. And one of the things that I've learned in my coaching and then also personally, as I continue on in my health journey, is that it's really, really important to pay attention to the amount of food that we consume, right? So the quality of food matters, but the quantity of food matters just as much. And what we're learning, it's really sad that sort of the modern resources and education that we have about nutrition is actually very outdated. And it's based on studies done on a very specific population that does not apply to the majority of us. So we really don't need as much food as we're consuming. The amount of food that we were consuming during the pandemic, where nobody was going anywhere, we were all at home sitting on our butts the whole time. We did not need to be eating that much during 2020, right? Because food is supposed to be fuel. Food is supposed to fuel our physical activity. So unless you are a college athlete or your goal is to become a professional athlete where you're using your body to earn a living, if that's not what you're doing, then you don't need to fuel your body like an athlete. You don't need to be consuming, multiple meals and snacks all throughout the day. So paying very, very close attention. You don't even have to change your diet that much if you paid very close attention to the amount of food that you're consuming, when you're actually eating. Are you actually eating when you're hungry versus when you're eating when you're bored or when you're sad or when you're stressed? If we just start right there, like the mindfulness in what we're eating, how much we're eating, and when we're eating, you add that in with some exercise, and that's just an effortless way right there without even going through extravagant attempts to lose weight. That's just the perfect way to get started and to get the ball rolling.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you. We can talk forever, but we can't talk forever. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to share closing comments and share how people can contact you to continue on the conversation if they have any additional questions for you before we wrap up. So let's start with you, Yolanda.
I can be reached at, I'm actually only on Instagram, and that's Yolitex, YOLIETEX. Or you can feel free to email me, ycarol@me.com. And my cell phone number, I'm more than happy to give that out via email.
Okay, I'll just say
email. But yeah, ycarol@me.com. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. I appreciate being a part of it.
Absolutely.
You about to get some random text. You about to give out.
Crazy.
Oh man, let me just end by saying again, thank y'all for sharing space. On Instagram, I am PH Dodson, DODSON, on Instagram and Twitter. And then I have a podcast, some older episodes with my now wife. And we haven't done one in a while, but the handles on Instagram, it is mentalhealth_is_real. And then on Twitter, it is MH_is_real. So again, PH Dodson, Instagram and Twitter, and then the podcasts have different ones, different platforms, but always looking to stay connected and to learn with folks.
And thank you both for reminding me, Jatan and Dr. Milo. I also have a podcast. My podcast is Rest-Based Weight Loss, and you can find that on any platform that you listen to podcasts, Rest-Based Weight Loss. You can also email me at info@operationfixmylife.com. And I'll actually give out my phone number to text because it's a Google business number and I can shut that off and turn it back on when I need to. But that number is 847-380-1080. 847-380-1080 if you need any support, especially as we navigate these times through emotional eating, stress eating, just transforming your nutrition, stress management. I'm here to support you.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, my name is Jatan Davis. I was your moderator. I can be reached on social media, anyone at Jatan Davis, so Twitter, Facebook. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I am a host of a podcast as well. It's a trio here, podcasters, and it's the Journey to Jupiter Career Podcast, where we talk about some of these things like anxiety after graduating and different careers. We talk to professionals about their careers and their paths there. So if that interests you, check me out on any platform where you listen to podcasts. And so in closing, we just want to, of course, thank the BA, the Black Alumni Board, for creating this venue for us to get together, talk about such important issues. They have asked that I remind everyone that they have always been here, but are back with this renewed sense of energy. So they're encouraging everyone to connect. They have an official Facebook page. You can also reach out to them on their website. And they, of course, want to encourage you to log into Irish Campus. That's the Notre Dame alumni website for alumni, for current students to connect with you, but for us all to connect with one another as well. This is a great time for us to really come together as a community during this time and be even stronger when everything not goes back to normal, but gets better. I don't know like a better word. So that's all we have for tonight. Thank you again. And if you didn't catch our contact information as we were saying it, we do know that it will be shared in the link and the details for the recording. Okay, so you'll be able to get it there. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Cool.